It's early on Mother's Day, and like most mornings, I'm already awake, sipping coffee in the quiet of the kitchen. The sun has barely risen, casting soft, golden light across the countertops. In the silence of the house, there's a familiar peace, the kind that comes from years of routine. But even on a day like today, I can't shake the feeling that something will go wrong. My name is Thomas, and I've spent most of my life protecting the women I love. My wife, Sarah, the woman who raised our children with grace and patience, has always been the heart of our family. We've been married for over 4 decades now, and if you'd asked me a few years ago how I thought our relationship would look at this stage, I would have said secure, comfortable, maybe even a little predictable. But life is never that simple, is it? It's funny how quickly things can change. A few years ago, everything felt solid. We had a big family, a nice house, and everything seemed perfect. Then came the shifts, the quiet rifts no one saw coming, the cracks in the facade that no one could ignore. My son, David, had married Emily, a bright young woman with an energy that both captivated and, in some ways, unsettled me. But that wasn't the real issue. The issue was that Emily had slowly but surely altered the dynamics of our family. I'm not sure when it started. Maybe it was after she gave birth to our first grandchild. But one thing led to another. Slowly, her influence grew stronger. At first, I thought it was just me being an old-fashioned father, resistant to the changes in the family. But now, on this Mother's Day, I know I was wrong. Sarah was always the heart of our home. She was always the one who cooked, who set the table, who made every holiday feel special. I had always taken that for granted, and today, I'm reminded of how much I've taken her for granted. Because today, of all days, it's not Sarah who will be celebrated, it's someone else entirely. But let's back up a bit. The morning started like any other. Sarah was busy in the kitchen, preparing her famous cinnamon rolls. Her joy in those little things, in creating something special for the people she loved, was something I cherished. I watched her from the doorway, her hands moving with that familiar grace that always made me feel lucky to be married to her. "Tom, can you set the table?" she called, her voice carrying over the hum of the oven. I smiled and walked over to help. Setting the table was one of those little rituals we'd done together for years. Our children, David and his younger sister Emma, had grown up with these moments, and now it was my turn to continue them. I grabbed the plates and silverware, and placed them on the dining table with care. Every inch of the house felt like home, felt like something Sarah had built. But then, the doorbell rang. I opened the door to find Emily standing there, holding a large bag in her hand. Her expression was unreadable, and for a moment, I couldn't tell whether she was excited or upset. "Happy Mother's Day, Dad," she said with a smile, handing me a small gift bag. "For Sarah." "Thank you, Emily," I said, trying to sound cheerful, but there was something off in the way she was holding herself. I couldn't put my finger on it, but I felt a sense of unease in the pit of my stomach. "I'm sure she'll love it," I added, taking the bag. As I turned back to the kitchen, I noticed Emily lingered behind me in the hallway, her gaze fixed on Sarah. Sarah was busy kneading the dough, lost in her work. Emily's smile was polite, but her eyes held something else, a coldness I hadn't seen before. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to ease the tension. But she didn't respond, instead glancing at Sarah again, a flicker of something crossing her face. It wasn't until we all sat down at the table, ready to enjoy breakfast, that I realized the gravity of what was about to unfold. The table was set, the cinnamon rolls were fresh from the oven, and the coffee was hot. The kids, David and Emma, were seated at the table, and Sarah was still in the kitchen, humming softly as she finished up the final touches. The smell of homemade breakfast filled the air, and everything felt like it should, like it always had on Mother's Day. But as the minutes passed, something felt off. The way Emily was sitting across from me, her posture rigid, her eyes darting between Sarah and me, made me uneasy. I couldn't help but notice that David and Emma were unusually quiet too. Normally, they would have been teasing each other, laughing, filling the air with the sounds of family. But today, there was only an eerie stillness that hung over us. "Dad," David said suddenly, his voice breaking the silence. "There's something we need to talk about." His words hung in the air for a moment, and I looked up, puzzled. What could possibly be so important on a day like today, on Mother's Day of all days? My stomach tightened as I noticed that Emily was now sitting straighter, her fingers clutched around the edges of her napkin. I knew then, deep down, that whatever was coming next wasn't going to be good. "What's going on, David?" I asked, trying to sound calm, though I was starting to feel the first stirrings of anxiety. Emily glanced at Sarah, then back at me. Her lips parted as if she were about to speak, but then she stopped herself. Instead, it was David who took the lead. "Mom," he started, and I could tell by the way he said it that something was weighing heavily on his shoulders. "Emily and I have talked a lot, and we've come to a decision about the family dinner tonight." My heart sank. I knew the family dinner was supposed to be a big thing, an event to celebrate Sarah, to show her how much we appreciated everything she had done for us. But now, with David's serious tone, I had a sinking feeling in my gut. "What decision?" Sarah asked, her voice laced with concern, though she tried to hide it behind a smile. Emily's gaze flickered briefly to Sarah, and in that instant, I saw it. There was something behind her eyes, a calculation, a plan, and I couldn't shake the feeling that whatever it wasn't going to sit well with Sarah, with me. "I'm afraid we won't be able to fit everyone at the table tonight," Emily said, her voice strangely calm, almost rehearsed. "We've decided to invite only a few people." I blinked, caught off guard. This didn't make sense. The table was always big enough for all of us. Sarah had always made sure everyone had a place. I felt the tension building in the room as Emily continued, her voice unwavering. "We've invited some close friends, and I think it'll be more meaningful to have a more intimate gathering this year." It was as if the air in the room had thickened. Sarah was silent, and I could see her struggling to process Emily's words. I wanted to say something, to defend Sarah, to make sure this wasn't happening, but I could only watch as the weight of Emily's statement hung in the air like a storm cloud. "I don't understand." Sarah finally spoke, her voice shaky now. "Why wouldn't I be invited? I thought this was supposed to be about celebrating Mother's Day for all of us." "It is," Emily said, but her words felt hollow. "But we're just doing things a little differently this year. We thought it might be nice to switch it up." I could feel the anger rising within me. This wasn't a simple switch up. This was a blatant move to exclude Sarah, to take something that should have been hers and strip it away. I could see how hurt Sarah was, how confused, but she didn't say anything more. She just sat there, staring at the table, her hands clasped in front of her. "David," I said, my voice tight, "this doesn't make sense. Your mother is the reason we're all here. She's the one who brought us all together. You can't just take that away." David shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "It's not like that, Dad. Emily and I just thought it would be more special with fewer people. We really need to focus on what's important to us right now." I felt my blood boiling. There it was again, that word, important. Like Sarah wasn't important enough to be included. Like she was some afterthought in her own family. "Emily," I said, my voice steady but firm, "if this is about what I think it is, we're not doing this. You don't get to take away Sarah's seat at the table. Not today." Emily didn't back down, though. She just stared at me, unflinching. "You're taking this the wrong way, Dad. We still love Sarah, but we just thought this would be better." I could see Sarah trying to hold back her tears, trying to keep it together for the sake of the family. But I could see it in her eyes, she was crushed. Emily had done the unthinkable. She'd taken something meant to honor Sarah, something she'd worked for, and twisted it into something entirely different. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold. There was no mistaking the finality of Emily's decision. My heart sank for Sarah. who looked like she'd been slapped across the face. I wanted to stand up, to shout, to demand that they take it all back, but I stayed seated. I could see in Sarah's eyes that she was trying to process what had just happened, to make sense of the cruelty behind Emily's words. "I don't understand," Sarah murmured quietly, her voice trembling as she looked at me, searching for an answer, for support. David, trying to salvage the situation, reached over and placed his hand on Sarah's, but I could tell he wasn't really present in this moment. His eyes were glued to the floor, clearly feeling the weight of the awkwardness that had descended over us. The silence between us was deafening. "This isn't about not loving you, Mom," David said again, though I could tell his words felt hollow. "It's just that we want to do something different, something smaller, more meaningful." Meaningful? My mind raced, but I couldn't piece together any logic behind their reasoning. I looked at Emily, who was sitting there, her face calm, almost indifferent, and I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of resentment toward her. This wasn't just about a dinner. This was about something much deeper, something about control, about making sure Sarah knew her place in their family dynamic. "You're saying I'm not part of that family anymore?" Sarah's voice cracked as she asked, barely above a whisper, but it felt like a thunderclap in the quiet room. "You're saying I don't belong here on Mother's Day with my own children?" Emily's face stiffened, but she didn't flinch. "It's not about that, Sarah. We just thought—" "No, Emily, it's exactly about that." I cut her off, my voice sharp, rising with the frustration I could no longer hold in. "You've taken away Sarah's place at the table. You've taken away her seat in her own family. I don't see why this is such a big deal, Dad," David muttered, almost like he was speaking to himself. "It's just dinner. We'll still celebrate, just differently." "Just dinner?" I repeated, incredulous. "This isn't just dinner, David. This is about respect. This is about honoring your mother, who's always been there for you, no matter what. And you've let your wife tear that away for what? To make her feel more important? To make your little family feel exclusive?" Emily stood up then, her chair scraping harshly against the floor, and she looked at me with a defiant expression. "You're making this sound worse than it is, Dad. All I'm asking for is a smaller celebration, something more personal. It's time to focus on our immediate family." I shot up from my chair, my chest tight with frustration. "You're wrong," I said, my voice low and controlled, but carrying the weight of everything I was feeling. "This isn't about a personal celebration. This is about you trying to rewrite the rules, trying to remove Sarah from her rightful place in this family. And I won't stand for it." The tension in the room was suffocating. David was visibly uncomfortable, shifting in his seat, glancing at Emily before looking back at me, unable to find the words to fix what had already been broken. And then, just as I thought I couldn't take it any more, Emily's voice cut through the thick silence again, calm and collected. "You want to know what the real gift is, Dad?" she asked, her words dripping with a cold edge. "The real gift is that I'm allowing Sarah to stay at home, to sit at the table with us tonight. She can enjoy the family dinner, if she's okay with it. That's the gift." I blinked, processing what she had just said. There it was, the true extent of the manipulation. She wasn't doing Sarah a favor. She was making it seem like she had the power to decide whether Sarah would be allowed to attend her own family dinner, as though she were granting her some kind of mercy. I turned to Sarah, who was still sitting there, frozen in shock. I could see the hurt in her eyes, the betrayal. My heart ached for her, but at the same time, I was so damn angry I could barely contain it. "No, Emily," I said, my voice trembling now with a mixture of outrage and disbelief. "The real gift is that we will never forget what you've done here today. You've taken something sacred and turned it into a game of power, and I promise you, this family will never be the same because of it." For the first time since the conversation had started, Emily faltered. Her eyes flickered with something. Regret? or perhaps just a realization that she had crossed a line she could never undo. "I think I need to go," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible, but I could hear the pain in every word. "I just need some space." "Wait, Mom," David said, standing up now, his hand reaching toward her. But Sarah was already on her feet, shaking her head. She didn't want his pity, and she certainly didn't want Emily's. "I need to go," Sarah repeated, her voice stronger this time, but still thick with emotion. "I need time to think. I need to figure out what just happened here." I watched as she walked toward the door, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the quiet house. Emily didn't move to stop her. David looked between the two of us, clearly torn between his wife and his mother, but ultimately, it was Sarah who had made her decision. And just like that, the Mother's Day breakfast that had started with promise was shattered beyond repair. The door slammed shut behind Sarah, the sound echoing through the empty house. I stood there for a moment, still frozen, as if expecting something to change, as if someone would magically undo what had just been said and done. But of course, that wasn't going to happen. David was staring at the door, his face contorted with frustration. He wanted to run after Sarah, I could see it in his eyes, but something held him back. Maybe it was guilt, maybe it was confusion, or maybe, just maybe, he was finally starting to understand the gravity of the situation. But Emily? Emily was calm, too calm, like she didn't feel any of the tension or weight that had just shifted in the room. She took a deep breath, as if this was all part of some calculated plan. She smoothed her shirt, straightened her posture, and gave me a sharp look as if daring me to say something more. "This is ridiculous," David muttered, pacing now, rubbing his hand over his face. "I didn't want any of this." "You should have thought about that before you let your wife decide everything," I said, my voice low but filled with anger. "She's taken away your mother's place in this family, David. She's made her clear she doesn't want me here." "It's not like that," David protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "She didn't mean it that way." "Didn't mean it?" I snapped. "David, you heard her. She flat out took my wife's seat at the table and then tried to dress it up as a gift. What part of that doesn't mean it?" David stood there, conflicted, unsure of how to respond, and then Emily stepped in. "You're making this worse than it has to be, Dad," she said, her tone dismissive. "We're not trying to hurt anyone. We just wanted a smaller, more intimate celebration." "Smaller? You wanted to take away what matters most, Emily. You wanted to push Sarah aside, make her feel like she didn't belong. That's what this is really about. You're trying to control everything and everyone around you." I shot back, feeling the floodgates of frustration open. David looked at Emily, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but then he closed it again, looking defeated. "Maybe it's time we all just took a step back," I continued, trying to calm myself, but still feeling the heat of the moment. "Maybe it's time you both realized what you've done here. This is more than just a messed up Mother's Day. This is about family, respect, and love." But instead of responding to me, Emily turned to David with a sigh, as if I wasn't even in the room. "Don't listen to him, David," she said softly. "We're doing what's best for our family. You know that. Just let it go. Let it go." The words echoed in my mind like an insult. No, I couldn't just let it go. Not this time. I wasn't going to let my wife be dismissed by anyone, not even by my own son and his wife. "I'm not letting it go," I said firmly, standing up straighter, my voice steady. "This is where I draw the line." Emily turned her gaze back to me, her eyes narrowing. "What do you mean?" "What I mean is, I'm done playing by your rules. I'm done letting you and David push me around. If I have to make things right with my family, I'll do it myself. But I won't just sit here and watch you destroy everything we've worked for." David's eyes widened, but he didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at his wife as if waiting for her to intervene, but Emily remained silent. "I'm going after Sarah," I said, my voice quieter now but with a sense of finality. "And I'm going to make sure she knows she's welcome in our family. No one gets to push her out. Not you, not anyone." I grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair and turned to leave, my mind racing with a mixture of anger and determination. I could feel David's eyes on my back as I made my way toward the door, but I didn't look back. I found Sarah sitting in the park just down the street, her figure slumped on a bench, staring out at the trees as if she were lost in her thoughts. It wasn't hard to find her. I knew where she'd go when she needed space. I took a deep breath and walked toward her, every step feeling heavier than the last. "Sarah," I called gently as I approached. She looked up, her face pale, her eyes red from the tears she had clearly been holding back. When she saw me, her expression softened, but she didn't say anything. She didn't need to. I sat down beside her without a word, just letting the silence fill the space between us for a moment. I could see how much she was hurting, and it broke my heart to see her like this. "I'm sorry," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I should have stopped it. I should have stood up for you earlier, Dad," Sarah whispered, her voice shaky. "I don't know what just happened. I never thought she would do that. I thought I had a place in this family." "You do have a place," I said quickly, turning to face her. "Don't ever think you don't. You're part of this family, and I'll make sure everyone remembers that. But it's so hard," Sarah admitted, wiping her eyes. "I feel like I don't belong anymore, like I've been pushed out. I just don't understand why Emily had to do that. She was trying to control the narrative, Sarah. She wanted to feel powerful. But I promise you, we're not going to let her rewrite our story, not this time." We sat there in silence for a few more minutes, the cool breeze carrying away the weight of our words. I could see Sarah calming down, her breathing becoming steadier. But I knew this wasn't the end. There were still things that needed to be said, actions that needed to be taken. After a long moment of silence, Sarah finally stood up, her movements slow but deliberate. She took a deep breath as if preparing herself for something more than just a conversation. "We're going to fix this," she said, her voice steady now, though the determination behind it was unmistakable. "We can't let Emily tear us apart, not like this." I stood up too, matching her resolve. "No, we can't. But this isn't just about her. It's about us, as a family. We've been through a lot, but we've always come out stronger on the other side. I'll be damned if I let her dictate our future." Sarah smiled faintly, but I could see the exhaustion in her eyes. It had been a long day, and I knew the weight of everything that had just happened was still sitting heavy on her shoulders. She deserved more than this. We both did. "I don't know what to do next," she said quietly, looking away. "It's like I'm stuck in this nightmare and don't know how to wake up from it." "We're going to wake up, Sarah," I said, my voice firm. "We're going to take control back. This isn't over yet. We still have a voice, and we're going to use it." The fire in her eyes reignited. "You're right. We've let Emily get away with too much for too long. It's time we put our foot down." We both knew that this wasn't going to be easy. Taking on Emily and David wasn't something that could be done in one conversation or in one day. But it was the first step in a long journey toward reclaiming our place in this family, and that's what mattered. The next morning, after a sleepless night spent tossing and turning with ideas racing through my mind, I made a decision. It was time to go to David and Emily's house. No more second-guessing, no more hesitating. The longer we waited, the more we allowed their actions to fester and grow. If I wanted to rebuild the relationship I had with my son, and if I wanted Sarah to be seen and respected, I had to do something bold. I told Sarah about my plan, and though her face tightened with concern, she agreed. "It's about time you took a stand," she said. "But be careful, Dad. Don't let things escalate. You don't want to burn every bridge." "I'm not burning bridges," I assured her. "But I'm not letting them treat us like we're invisible either." I picked up my jacket, my heart racing with anticipation as I drove to their home. The house, once a place of comfort, now seemed to stand as a reminder of everything that had gone wrong. The white columns that framed the front porch, the well-manicured lawn, all of it felt like a facade, a mask for the dysfunction that lay beneath. David was out in the driveway, fixing something under the hood of his car when I pulled up. Emily was inside, no doubt busy making preparations for whatever had been planned for today. I could already feel the tension in my chest, but I didn't let it show. This was something I had to do for Sarah, for me, for our family. I got out of the car, walking toward David slowly, my mind clear but my emotions still raw. He looked up, wiping his hands on a rag before tossing it into the back of his truck. There was a pause as our eyes met, and for a brief moment, I saw that old spark of connection between us, but it was fleeting. "Dad," he said quietly, almost cautiously, as if unsure of what was coming next. "You came to talk?" "Yeah," I said, my voice low but steady. "We need to talk, about Sarah, about what happened yesterday." David shifted uncomfortably, his eyes flickering over to the house. "I know things got heated, but I didn't want to upset you. You know that, right?" "Upset me?" I echoed, incredulous. "You're more concerned about upsetting me than about your wife pushing my wife aside?" "David, I've been watching you let Emily call all the shots. Let her make decisions that affect everyone without any consideration for the family we've built, and I'm done with it." He opened his mouth, probably to apologize or to explain, but I raised my hand, cutting him off. "Don't say you're sorry, David. You've said it 100 times before. Actions speak louder than words, and right now, your actions are loud and clear." I could see the weight of my words settling on him, and for the first time in a long while, I saw him flinch. He wasn't used to being challenged like this. He wasn't used to hearing the truth laid out so bluntly. "You need to make a choice, David," I continued, my voice firm. "You can either stand with Emily, let her tear your family apart, or you can stand with your mother and with Sarah, but you can't have both." David's face twisted with conflict. I could see the gears turning in his mind as he processed what I was saying, the realization that he had been allowing his wife to dictate the terms of his relationships. The silence stretched between us as he seemed to struggle with the decision before him. David sighed deeply, finally lowering his head. "I've messed up, haven't I?" "Big time," I said, my tone softening a little. "But there's still time to fix this. It's not too late." He nodded slowly, taking a deep breath. "I don't want to lose Sarah. I don't want to lose you, Dad. I just don't know how to fix all of this." "Start by listening," I said firmly. "Start by putting your family first, your real family, the one that's always been there for you. Don't let Emily blind you to what really matters." David looked up at me, and for the first time in a long while, I saw the son I remembered, the son who had once looked to me for guidance. It wasn't too late to rebuild what had been lost, but it would take time, patience, and a hell of a lot of work. "I'll talk to her," he said, his voice steady now, more certain. "I'll make things right." The next few days were a whirlwind of emotions, discussions, and surprisingly some healing. David and Emily sat down with Sarah and me, each of us laying out our thoughts, our frustrations, our desires for the future. It wasn't easy. There were some heated moments, some tears, but ultimately, we came to an understanding. Emily, to her credit, acknowledged the pain she'd caused, though it wasn't an easy apology to accept. She wasn't perfect, and neither was David, but for the first time, I saw them both working to rebuild what had been damaged. We agreed that Sarah would have a place at the table next time. No questions asked. That's how families should be, inclusive, understanding, and loving. And though Emily and I would never be the closest of friends, I was willing to try. For the sake of my son, for Sarah, and for the future of our family. A few weeks later, we gathered for another Mother's Day dinner, and this time, the atmosphere was different, lighter, more genuine. Sarah sat at the table, her seat no longer an afterthought, and David and Emily made sure to acknowledge her in front of everyone. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. As we sat down to eat, I raised my glass to my wife, to Sarah, to the strength it had taken to get through all of this. To family, I said, my voice clear, filled with gratitude. To finding our way back to each other. The table clinked with glasses, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a deep sense of peace. Things were far from perfect, but they were on the right path. Sometimes, it takes a lot of pain, a lot of hurt, and a lot of mistakes before we can see the way forward. But as I sat there with my family, I realized that no matter the obstacles, no matter the challenges, we could rebuild. Because family, in the end, is about love, respect, and the willingness to fight for what's right. And I would fight for my family, no matter what it took.